Hey guys, this is Parsh Verma and today I'm going to teach you Sicilian Pelikan and its inbuilt trap. So let's start. The opening starts with e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6. The main objective of both the sides is to gain control on the d4 square. So now white here places queen pawn to d4 and black has two options. Black can play knight takes d4 or pawn takes d4. If black plays knight takes d4, then white captures a knight and pawn takes knight, queen takes pawn. So now here we can see that white is positionally very strong than black because the king only the bishop is to be developed on the king side and the queen is also developed, but whereas black's king side is totally undeveloped. So black here must play pawn takes pawn. When white plays knight takes d4, then we must not capture the knight, because if we do, you get the same structure. So now here we can play knight to f6, threatening the e4 pawn. So white here plays knight to c3, defending the pawn as well as developing the knight. So here black plays e5, threatening this knight on the d4 square. So white here has two options. White can place knight to f3 or white can place knight to b5. If white places knight to f3, then we get almost the same structure that of the four knights game. So if black plays knight to b5, we can play our pawn to d6 because black is threatening the d6 square with the knight and with the queen. So in order to defend the square, we can play pawn to d6. So here if white captures the pawn, we can simply capture it with the bishop. So the square is defended. So now white plays bishop to g5, pinning the knight on the f6 square. So now black can play a6, threatening the b5 knight. Now white has two options. White can defend the knight by moving knight to a5, or white can simply capture the knight. If white follows the main line and moves his knight to a3, then we can simply move our pawn to b5, creating a threat of fork on the b4 square. So white is forced to move one of his knight, and the best move here is knight to d5. Here white is attacking the knight, and in order to defend it, black plays bishop to e7. So now white captures the knight and bishop takes bishop, and many people here play c3. c3 is played to defend the b4 square that is coming from black. So people also play c4. If white plays c4, you can simply play b4, and white is forced to move his knight to c2. So here if white plays his pawn to b4, this is actually a big blunder, because actually it's not really a blunder because it's a bad move, because white loses a pawn here. We can capture this knight pawn with the knight, and if knight takes knight, then queen to a5. Now after queen to a5, we can see that the b4 knight is pinned, and there is also an attack on the knight on a3 square. So let's look at the other variation. where white captures the knight with the bishop. So here, as we can see that we cannot capture the bishop with the queen, because if we do, white will play knight to c7, and this is a fork here, and we will lose the rook. So we are forced to play black g takes f6, and now white can play his knight to a3. Now I'm going to tell you a trap which is played by black. After white playing the bishop takes knight, pawn takes bishop, knight to a3, b5, knight d5, f5. So now by playing f5, black offers white the pawn exchange of e4 and the e5 pawns. So the good move from white side is to play the bishop to d3. But if white accepts the pawn exchange, we can simply capture this pawn. White plays his queen to c3, hitting this bishop, and we can play the knight to d4, defending the bishop and threatening the queen. So here white can play his knight to c7, queen takes knight, queen takes rook, king takes king to e7, and c3. c3 is a normal move which is threatening this knight, and now we will play b4. In b4, if white captures the knight, he can capture the knight, and if white captures a pawn or pushes his pawn, then we can move our queen to c3. As we can see here, that is a double threat, and we can simply capture the rook. But if white does not capture the pawn and move his bishop to a6, then we can simply capture this pawn. Then white places queen to b7, forcing black to accept the queen exchange. So queen takes queen, bishop takes queen, and pawn takes a1 equals to queen. So here we can see that capturing the knight is not the good move, whereas it's a blunder. So white captures the pawn, and we move the queen to b6. Here white captures the a6 pawn by the bishop and offering a queen exchange on the b7 square, and black must not accept the queen exchange because black is already a rook down. So black plays his queen to b4, giving a check to the black king. So white has two options here. White can move his king to f1, or white can move his king to d1. If white moves his king to d1, we can simply play queen to a4. Here white has three options. White can move his king to d2, he can move his king to c1, or white can move his king to e1. If white moves his king to e2, we can simply play bishop to h6. Then white play his king to e1. Then we can simply capture the queen. So now if white plays king to c1, then also we can play bishop to h6. And the only option for white here is to play pawn to f4, and now we can capture the pawn with the bishop, and it's checkmate. So what if white moves his king back to e1? Then we will not move our queen to b4, and instead we'll move a queen to a5. So if white moves his king back to d1. We can now play bishop to h6, and if white captures the rook, we can simply checkmate the white king. And if white defends the checkmate by defend the check for now by playing queen to b7. We can play the king to e6, or the better option is to play king f6. So now here we can see that white can play his pawn to f4, and we can defend. We can now also capture the pawn, and now black has nowhere to escape. But black surely can play knight to c4. If white plays knight to c4, we play bishop g4. Bishop g4. After bishop g4, white has only one option, that is queen to f3. And now we can simply capture the queen by the bishop or by the knight. So if we capture by the knight, it's a good move because there is one more threat coming on the d2 square. And if white captures the knight, we can simply capture the pawn, and we can take the second rook also. So now we have seen that only the correct option here for white is to play king f1. After king f1, we can play queen to d2. So to defend this square, white plays rook to e1, and now black plays bishop d3. Now to defend the mate for a couple of moves, white plays bishop takes bishop, then queen takes bishop. Then white has two options. White can move his king back to g1, or white can move his rook to e2. If white moves rook to e2, we can capture the rook and king g1 and queen e1 checkmate. So if white moves king to g1, we can play knight to e2. And now also if white capture it with the rook, we can simply move our queen to d1 and rook to e1, queen takes rook, and that's checkmate. So now white has to move his king to f1, and we will play knight to g3, and as you can see, it's a double threat. So the only option for white here is to play king to g1. So after king to g1, queen f1, rook takes queen, and knight e2, and that's checkmate.